Hi, I'm Bearheart, and this is Kirsten.
Howdy.
And behind the camera and the controls over here, we have Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
And welcome to Bearheart Labs presents the International Geek of Mystery show. And today we're going to talk about politics. So if you hate politics and you're not interested in politics, please don't go away. It's important and you should be paying attention.
So I have to stay.
So you have to stay. That's right. You have to stay. So just a little bit about me and politics first, because this is my show. And it's really about all the things that go on in Bearheart's brain. So my relationship with politics is both simple and complicated. My parents were very, very political when I was growing up, and they were very involved in democratic politics in LA and in California. And, I kind of, we would go out canvassing and things like that. And I was a little kid. And
Right.
all I knew was that this is what grown-ups do.
Can't
As
wait.
I got older, I realized that partisan politics in particular is nuts and has very little to do with the business of government and has more to do with, team sports, right?
Go sports.
Yay, blue team. Yay, red team. Red team hates blue team. Blue team hates red team. And, you go to sports events, even the otherwise pastoral and peaceful baseball, which is my favorite sport. But, you go to football matches or, basketball matches or soccer matches, or as they call it in Europe, football matches.
Football.
And you see people beating each other up because one likes one team and one likes the other team. And then you look here at American politics and you see people literally murdering each other over their political stances. And, that all just seems to me to have nothing to do with the business of government and to have nothing to do with the reality of our everyday lives. And in fact, it's become more and more apparent to me as the years have progressed and politics have become more polarized that the vast majority of Americans, and I presume this is true in most of the Western world, it may vary, but the vast majority of Americans are not like that. They're really not even engaged enough to see the blood sport of it. They're really just they're mostly just interested in, is there food on the table? Is there money in the bank account? Do we have a car so we can get our kids to school? Is there clothes? Is there food? The daily living.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get out of that, and have that extra time in order to engage in, politics or what's going on, or even, watching the news. I know you can have it on in the background, but I know, like, for me personally, you saying, like, the everyday, like, to-do list resonates with me because that's, I wake up in the morning and I look at my checklist and I make sure everything gets done, and by the time I'm laying down in bed, I realize that I hadn't done anything outside of my checked boxes, no leisure time or no time to read a book. You always talk about all the books that you read, and I envy that. So maybe you can give me some life.
Well, if you want to take a slight tangent, I do most of my reading at night before I go to sleep.
See, I conk out before I can even get into the groove.
Yeah.
So
that's a different sort of problem, and we can talk about that another time. I have down here on my list of future episodes one on spirituality. And my view of spirituality, like my view of politics, is very different than the rest of the world's view of spirituality. I don't see it so much as a seeking of a higher power, as I do of a seeking of the inner power of how I manage this meat machine that I walk around in every day.
I forgot about the meat machine.
It can take over for me, and then my consciousness is more of a slave to the machine than the other way around.
Sounds very metal. That both metaphorical
that's the
and
odd
literal.
thing about the meat machine is it's not made of metal; it's made of meat.
Dun-dun-ch. Do you think that because your parents were so involved in politics that kind of sparked your...
I think that's part of it. I know that I was close to my dad.
Right.
And I know that we had a lot of long conversations about politics. And there were periods in my life where my politics veered away from his enough that those conversations became heated, which to me was far more interesting than the polite ones.
And that's usually why I personally don't like to talk about politics, is because people do get so heated, and I'm very non-confrontational. So it's funny to me that you are not funny, haha, but funny, weird, that you're the complete opposite and that you enjoy the drama.
I do enjoy drama. And there comes a point where it becomes so irrational that I disengage. When I'm talking to somebody who is only arguing for the sake of making points, but they're really just counting coup, and that's not interesting to me at all. And I quickly disengage from that, and that disengagement usually annoys the shit out of them. But I see this as also a matter of, in different parts of my life, I have been very poor. And in different parts of my life, most parts of my life really, there's only been a few years here and there where I've just chosen to disengage from the economy for whatever reason and lived a nomadic life. But for most of my life, I've found money to be not terribly challenging. I've had marketable skills. I've known how to, figure out how to earn what I need to earn. So I've been fairly secure in my day-to-day needs, and that has allowed me the room to pay attention to some other things. And I think that's, we're going to talk about the reality of running a small business in one of our upcoming episodes. And I think that's an important point for people to get. The reality of our world is largely economic, and in order to feel secure enough to be able to do the things that really sing to you, that really make you happy, that you enjoy, the recreational things, we need to really have that financial foundation. And a lot of people would like to say, oh, I don't care about money. And the reality is that, well, first of all, most of the people who say they don't care about money have enough of it that they don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
But, then there's also people who are poor and they say, well, I don't want to just do this for the money. I want to do this because, for the art of it, or for the, the passion of it, or whatever. And you need to find the place where those things converge.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just never going to find that passion and that joy. But back to politics, and it's really not that much of a different subject. My view of politics is that the job of government is to care for the people, to make it possible for the people to live their lives in relative peace and security. I think it was in the preamble to the Constitution. I have to do the whole thing in order to remember. Provide with the common sense, promote the general welfare, ensure the blessings of liberty. In there is to secure that peace and security for the people. And perhaps not in those exact words, but that is, in my view, the purpose of government, is to create a safe and secure space for the people to live their lives. And this takes us to my primary philosophy about politics: is do more good for more people and do less harm for fewer people.
That's pretty much your philosophy on life in general.
It is.
I like that it is applicable to all branches, all the conversations that we have. I like that there's that recurring theme.
Well, it's consistent, at least.
We love consistency.
And in that way, I see myself as a very simple person. I mean, in many ways, I'm tremendously complicated. And I'm a very picky eater. But, really my philosophy about life is do more good, do less harm, help more people, harm fewer people. And, I don't see it as necessarily even possible to make everybody happy. And I don't see it as necessarily possible for the government to prevent harm to anybody. I mean, there's always going to be stupid people doing stupid shit and winning stupid prizes.
Heard.
what was that word?
Heard.
Okay. So when I look at the political landscape as devolving into this team sports, red team versus blue team, beating each other up in the stands, it saddens me because that business of government is becoming harder and harder to do and farther away from the imperative that it's supposed to be in government. The political polarization has gotten broader and broader and broader to the point where, just a few decades ago, I mean, as recently as the Reagan administration and the administrations, recently before that, it was possible for politicians on the right and politicians on the left to compromise in order to get the business of the governing done. And we've seen less and less and less of that to the point where today any hint of compromise is seen as betrayal. And any politician who really wants to do their job and find common ground and get the things done that are going to benefit the people of their district or their state or the country as a whole, those politicians are guaranteed to lose their job and not be reelected in the next cycle. And that's a real problem for the rest of us because we see as time progresses and this polarization gets worse, the life of the average person gets worse and worse. It's becoming harder and harder for somebody to, even a single person, to just have a job and be able to afford a decent place to live and a decent standard of living. And, in my dad's time, that was more than possible. Like I've said before, my dad had a workaday job, middle management type of salary, going up the ladder, and he was able to afford a nice suburban house, one income house. His wife didn't, my stepmom didn't have to work. She stayed at home, took care of the kids. He raised 5 kids, put several of them through college. I was a holdout. And 2 cars in the driveway. I mean, it was a very nice middle-class suburban life. And that doesn't exist anymore today. A job like that doesn't exist anymore. And a house like that, I mean, that house that he was able to purchase on that salary, that very house, I looked it up on the internet a few days ago, that very house is now like $1.3 million. Ain't nobody got that kind of.
Well, going back to what you said about politicians that serve the people and do their job well, them guaranteeing losing their job, the election.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, okay, so why I think that is that their job is to be reelected. Mm-hmm. They see their job as getting reelected, and that is like the first point of failure. In a perfect world, in my perfect world, there would be term limits on all politicians, and we wouldn't see career Congress critters. We wouldn't see
Critters.
Congress critters, that's what I call them.
You coined that?
I've mentioned before that I see the human race in general as a foreign organism. Mm-hmm. They see their job as getting reelected. The first thing they do when they get elected to Congress is they start running for reelection. They start raising money, and they spend far more time raising money and campaigning than they do writing bills, for God's sake, reading bills. I mean, so much of this stuff gets passed without them ever reading it because it's all just about, is our team going to make points or is their team going to make points? And then this goes back to the political parties themselves. Most people don't understand what a political party is. A political party is a corporation. It is a private corporation. It is not a public corporation. There's no stock or no stock on a public market. It is owned and controlled by people whose job it is to feed that corporation. And as I've said elsewhere, a corporation is an organism that eats money and shits products and services. And so the purpose of the political parties, the biological imperative of those organisms, is to find and acquire more money and then to convert that money into products and services that will serve the purposes of increasing the amount of money that they get. They're just an organism with a biological imperative like any other organism. So the political parties, their mission is to raise money. And they do this by finding political candidates who can raise a lot of money and getting them elected to office so that they can continue to raise a lot of money. And that is the entire purpose of the political parties. And so we have two of them, and they have these ideologies. And I say that with air quotes for those of you who are listening on your iPods.
iPods? What year is this?
If you haven't guessed already, I be old.
Well, and the reason I'm sitting here, I'm smiling like a dork, because every time you say political party, I literally am picturing like a party, like party hats, confetti.
Well,
very
and this is not far from this is not far from the image that they have. They have their party hats, with the party slogans on them. They have they have the bunting where they make their speeches, and they have these conventions that are all kinds of confetti and shit. So it's really not that far off. So the job of the politician now becomes keeping the party happy. Mm-hmm. And this is where I was. Each of these parties, we look at the blue party and the red party, the donkey party and the elephant party. They have ideologies, which I'm saying with air quotes, but those aren't actually the ideologies of the corporations, the political parties themselves. Those are ideologies that they have adopted in order to market that ideology to the people. And so the Democratic Party has found ideology that they can market to a large population, and the Republican Party has found an ideology that they can market to a large population. None of these people actually subscribe to these ideologies. None of them actually believe their own bullshit. And when you hear them talk, and some of that talk is really, really outrageously crazy, they don't actually believe it. And especially at this extremes of the spectrum, and I'm not going to name names here because that just gets into a thing. But those very extreme views on the far right and on the far left, nobody actually believes that shit. They only do it because that is outrageous enough, and outrage is a huge marketing tool, outrageous enough that people will dig into their wallets and feed the monster. So this is how it's gotten to this point, because it started out as them trying to be reasonable, like, I don't know, 200 years ago, even 50 years ago, they were trying to be more or less reasonable. But it has gotten to the point where they have realized that the outrage and the fear are their greatest tools. And so on one side of the political spectrum, they paint the other side as being these monsters. On the left, they paint the right as being fascists and trying to take your rights away, and all of that. And on the right, they paint the left as being communists and socialists, and they use these scare words as if they mean anything in the current political landscape. None of these words actually mean anything in the political landscape. They're only there to stoke fear and outrage, which gets people to dig into their wallets. And until we break this down so that none of that applies anymore, our politics is going to remain so divisive that the business of taking care of the people never actually happens.
Is there anything that you believe that the two parties share?
Like they definitely share their love of money. And this is interesting because both sides paint the other side as using money as a weapon. The left demonizes the Koch brothers, and that's Koch, not COKE. All right, for those of you who are like, ooh, he said Coke, and sticking their fingers up their noses.
Oh, I was thinking like the soda.
Yeah, yeah. Or the soda, which is named after the drug.
That's
Yeah.
that's going to have to be a whole other
Well, I mean,
conversation.
originally Coca-Cola was named that because it actually had cocaine in it and it pepped you up.
Oh
And
my.
and it was, not until, I don't know, the early like 1930s or something that they outlawed cocaine, and they had to replace it with caffeine.
What a shame.
And now there's caffeine in Coca-Cola, and that's why all of that happened. But that name actually came from one of my favorite scenes in, I don't know if you've ever seen the Beatles movie, Hard Day's Night. There's this scene where they're sitting on the train and somebody passes John Lennon a soda, and he puts it up to his nose and like this as a joke.
But then actually thinking about doing that'd probably hurt worse, like all the carbonation
Well,
and
no, it
everything.
was closed, but
Okay.
maybe we'll find a still of that to insert into the video here. Ricky, find a still of that. She's on it. All right. So, yeah, that's the thing that they have. And then on the right, they demonize, I'm trying to even remember the names of the people, but, they
I
talk
thought we
about
weren't naming names.
the left as being all tax and spend, tax and spend. And, the reality is, if you look at the results of the economy under the various administrations over the past 50 years, the deficit has shrunk under Democratic administrations and grown under Republican administrations. But they paint this picture of the Democrats as being tax and spend and ruining our economy and all of that. They lie through their teeth, both sides. And I don't mean to do the both sidesism. I mean, obviously there is one side whose marketing ideology I more agree with than the marketing ideology of the other side. And there's one side that's been, literally trying to destroy democracy, and the other side that hasn't. But all of this is just smoke and mirrors. None of them actually believe it, and none of them actually mean it. The problem happens when the people get all riled up, the citizens, and decide to act on these outrageous claims, and that's why we get things like January 6th. I don't believe that president or any of their administration really wanted that to happen, but they did see it as something outrageous enough that it fed their pocketbooks. So when you ask what do they have in common, really the only thing they have in common is that they eat money and ship products and services. So this gets to the next part of my outline here. What do we do about all of this? What would be your thought on what we could do to fix this?
No. You are asking the wrong girl.
No, I'm asking somebody who has her priorities straight, who's really mostly just interested in taking care of her family and making sure that her kids grow up strong and healthy and have a better life than you had. And that's what we all want for our kids. We all want our kids to grow up and have an even better, and my life is really awesome, and I want my kids to have an even awesomer life.
Right.
And that's
Did
all
you say
I
awesomer?
actually want in life. I want to be able to see on my deathbed that my kids are strong and happy and prosperous and in loving relationships and have everything that they could possibly dream of and more. So as somebody with those priorities, honestly, what do you think can be done?
I don't know. What do you think can be done?
Oh, you keep just passing it back to me.
I told you I don't talk about politics, not even with like my close friends and family. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask leading questions. The problem is all about what?
Are you pointing to me?
Yes, I'm pointing to you. The problem is, we've talked about this. What do the two parties have in common?
That they demonize the other party.
That is definitely true. And they both eat money and ship products and services. So the problem really is the money, would you say? The problem is that the politicians are spending all of their time, and their only interest really is in lining their pocketbooks and lining the pocketbooks of the party. Does that sound like reasonable assessment of the problem of the situation to you?
That sounds like a wonderful wrap up. What's the word I'm trying to think of? Conclusion, wrap up.
Yeah.
I don't know what the word is. So, like a good outline of everything
well,
that you just put out there.
Do you think that's actually the problem?
I plead the fifth.
Here, I'm going to save Kirsten
Okay,
from this
thank you.
one and say that the problem is the same problem that humans have always had for the millennia that we have existed on this planet, and that is power, greed, and money. That's the problem. That's always going to be the problem with big corporations.
Any solution that is actually going to solve this problem must include removing money from the equation. If a politician goes to do their job and the money is not part of that equation, they don't need money to get reelected, and there is not an opportunity for them to use their office to raise more money, then they would have no choice but to just do their job. And the only people who would even run for office would be people who want to do that job of creating a better world for the citizenry.
Right, but you said that the people that do their jobs don't get reelected. And
But
are
the
you
only
saying that that's
reason for
because
that,
of the money?
That's because of the money. That is only because of the money. And that's because the political party will not give them money for reelection, will not allocate money, and will spend money to prevent them from being reelected because they are no longer towing the party line. And the party line is there only to raise more money, to create outrage and anger and fear so that they can raise more money, because people are afraid they're going to act on that by contributing to whichever political party.
So that's actually 100% true. And I'm going to chime in here and say that when I did work for a small business, we printed, it was a print shop, and we made a bunch of stickers. And one of our clients was Ted Cruz's campaign. And there were talks about whether or not
I've heard of that guy.
Yes.
And I've seen memes about that guy.
He was one of our clients, and we printed his stickers that said his campaign. And there was talks at the time about whether or not he would run for president in 2024. And everybody at the company, all the owners and investors, were sitting there, fingers crossed, praying that he would run for president in 2024 because it would make us millions of dollars. Yeah. So much money.
Printing
stickers and banners and
yard
everything.
Signs
yard signs were a big one. But one of the things he did is, to his highest donors, he would send out books of green eggs and ham. And I got angry calls at least 4 times a day from people who had somehow found that we were the print shop for Ted Cruz, and they were calling saying, why is he sending me this children's book? Is this a prank from the Democrats? What kind of person are you to send me this? And I was like, oh, well, I guess you donated over $100, $200 to his campaign. And they were hand signed by him. But what he really did was put stickers that had his signature on it. You can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes.
Yeah.
And all of the employees that we had working there would just put a sticker on the inside of the book, and that counted as signed by Ted Cruz.
Yeah. So that really is the game. Mm-hmm. And there's been a number of election reform laws over the years that have tried to regulate the way that money is spent in politics. And eventually the Supreme Court ruled that they couldn't do that because of the First Amendment, and they were treating political donations as free speech. And this, of course, made other people angry and raised money for other political parties. But the only way to completely remove money from the system would be to outlaw private money, which would mean money from individuals, money from corporations in politics, and only allow public money, which would be money that the government would allocate into politics. And so the idea that I've always liked, and this is an idea that has been promoted by a number of organizations, and we saw a video that was promoting this earlier today.
Before you say what you're going to say, was this, how you've predicted, in our past episodes, how you were like, oh, I predicted this a long time ago.
This will never happen.
No, but what I was going to ask is this something that you came up with on your own, or was it influenced by like the
Well,
videos that
this has
we were
been
watching
floated.
earlier?
This has been floated for years and years by many different people. Most recently by a third-party political candidate. Well, he was running as a Democrat, but he's now third-party Andrew Yang. And I really liked Andrew Yang for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things about him I don't like. But in general, his policies seem well thought out. They seem based in reality, based in math. I have a hat that says math on it. It was from Andrew Yang. And, he was one of the few politicians that really hit the high points for me. The high points for me in political policies are the things that harm the most people to get rid of those things. So the war on drugs, end the war on drugs. The war on drugs kills millions and millions of people in this country every day, and it incarcerates hundreds of millions of people, or maybe not hundreds, tens of millions of people, lots and lots of people, most of them disadvantaged, most of them black and people of color. The war on drugs was designed to incarcerate black people, mostly black men, and other men of color and other people of color. But that's what it was designed for. Yeah, it catches a few people who don't fit in that, but that's what it was designed to do. And it was a reaction to the 13th Amendment, which I think was the 13th Amendment, that outlawed slavery except for imprisoned people. And it allowed them to be, this is, I know, a very strong opinion. And in my view, it's true. Many of the laws during Jim Crow were specifically just there so that they could incarcerate young black men. And the war on drugs was like the epitome of this. And it has only served that purpose. It hasn't taken drugs off the street. It hasn't taken drugs out of the sororities and Greeks, in college, the college campuses and the college dorms. Those are still full of drugs, but those are mostly upper middle class white kids, and so they never get arrested. The kids who get arrested are the young black kids on the street who can't afford to go to college. Ending the war on drugs is high top on my list. Ending mass incarceration, ending our involvement in foreign wars that don't have anything to do with freedom, that only have to do with oil and other resources. I mean, this is stupid and ridiculous.
It's all.
There you go. So none of our political leaders, left or right, have addressed any of these problems, and they all get involved in all of this stuff. And we even had this year, President Biden, an executive order that gave clemency or some sort of relief to all incarcerated marijuana users, which works out to be like a few thousand people because it only affects the federal prison system. And then it was never even implemented. It was like he put the feather in his cap and then went on. If the world were really interested in fixing that problem, they would all of these marijuana dispensaries all over the country, those franchises would only be given to people of color who have been incarcerated and released for marijuana offenses. Those are the people that should have those instead of the young white yuppie, and now they're being run by corporations. This is all just part of the same problem. But really, getting back to the point, the proposal that I like, and Andrew Yang did champion this, but it was something that I had heard of before and I've always been in favor of, is to give every American citizen a voucher or scrip of $100. And this can only be spent on political contributions. So you have this $100, you can only spend it by giving it to politicians. And you choose local, county, state, federal. You have this $100 and you can dole it out however you like. Politicians are not allowed to accept any other money for any political purpose whatsoever, except for those scrip. And while they're in office, they're not allowed to accept any outside work. That's their only job. They're not allowed to sit on the board of some corporation that's going to give them $100 million a year to pass certain legislation. We have to take private money completely out of politics. The only politicians who would then want to seek office are the ones who actually want to do good. And yes, I do believe that there are good people in this world. I actually believe that most of us are good people.
So there's good meat machines and bad meat machines.
Yeah. Well, you see, I draw a distinction between the mind and the soul and the machine itself. The machine itself is this thing that I walk around in, and that, for my part, I haven't taken as good care of as I should have. And the person is the entity that inhabits the machine. It's all very sci-fi. But yes, I do believe that there are good people, and I do believe that if we implemented something like this, we would actually get plenty of takers who would say, there's lots and lots of people that I know who would happily run for office if they didn't believe that it would destroy their life. Because for most of us, we don't want to participate in that partisan game. And I think I saw statistics today, something like 70, almost 80% of the American public really doesn't give a shit about the partisan game. They don't want to play that game. They don't want anything to do with that. But there's enough of them who do that the system continues to work. So I honestly believe that if we were to implement this, that it would work. And I also honestly believe that it will never happen, because the machine is too powerful and they will not allow it to happen. So what are some of the other things?
The political machine or the meat machine?
The political machine.
Got it.
I know there's a lot of machines going on here.
So it's the theme,
Machinery, the political machinery, it is a theme. So what can we do? Well, we can work towards these things. We can work towards reforms like ranked choice voting, automatically registering people when they get a driver's license, or when they get any state ID card. Vote by mail. Keep in mind that elections are run at the state level. All elections in this country are run at the state level. Local elections, county elections, federal elections, even the federal elections are all run at the state level. So participate in your local elections. Vote in your local elections. And vote for reforms and champion reforms that are going to make it easier for us to eventually get to the point where we can really fix the system. Ranked choice voting is a good one because it allows candidates who are not part of the political machine to have a chance. The way things are today, if there's like a third-party candidate or a candidate that you don't think can ever win, there's no reason to vote for them, because that would split the vote and maybe let one of your political opponents win. Instead, with ranked choice voting, you can vote for that guy, and then you can say your second choice and your third choice, and all of that will be taken into consideration in the algorithm that decides who wins.
Well, and I still know a lot of people that just choose vote all Republican or vote all Democrat without doing any.
Those people aren't participating in the primaries at all, right? Because the primary is between two Republicans or two Democrats, or five of them.
Well, I'm not talking for all. I'm just saying that I've heard of people still doing that. It's 2022.
Those people who do that don't vote in the primaries, and they probably also don't vote in their local elections. They only vote, when in the elections that they hear about in all of the political ads that we're inundated with every 4 years.
Well, you got to vote so you can go get your sticker.
Exactly, because the stickers are important, and the stickers are what keeps that company that Ricky used to work for in business. So participate in your local elections, participate especially in your primaries. And, here in Nevada, where I live, we actually did pass ranked choice voting this year. And our primaries are going to be open primaries in the future. So I don't have to anymore register for a political party just so I can vote in the primaries, because I really don't want to register in a political party. But I do care about who's running the country, and I want to vote for good people. Now, with ranked choice voting and with open primaries, I can go in there and I can say, I like this weird, obscure guy that you have never heard of, but if he doesn't make it, then maybe this guy or maybe that woman.
Nice.
I grew up in LA, and so everybody is dude. In fact, everything is dude. This little figurine on my desk is dude. My coffee cup is dude.
I've duded my mom before. 10 out of 10 would not recommend.
Yeah, she probably would. From what I've heard of your mom, she's probably not going to put up with that shit. So participate in your local elections. Vote in your, especially local elections, because this is where all this shit starts. The board of supervisors or the school board or whatever. And support reforms like automatic registration, where everybody is automatically registered to vote, and vote by mail. I know that this has become controversial. It didn't used to be controversial.
Everything's
Many
a
states, including
controversy.
Arizona, Washington, a number of states have always had vote by mail. But vote by mail allows more of us to participate in elections. Who really has time to take off from work on a Tuesday? Because it's always on a Tuesday to go and vote. That was designed to keep you from participating in the elections. So the only people who can participate in the elections are the people who can afford to take a day off of work. And those people are richer than you. And those people are contributing to the political parties. And those people are contributing to the problem. In order for all of us to really participate in democracy, which is from the Latin roots that means the governing by the people, we need to be able to vote by mail so that we can sit at home after a hard day's work, or when we get up in the morning, fill out our ballot, stick it in the mailbox, and have our voice counted. I want to thank you all for your attention. It really warms my heart that y'all want to be here and share this with me. And of course, thank Kirsten and Ricky, or as I call them, Ricky.
Ricky.
They share a brain cell.
Yeah.
I'm grateful to all of you. Love you all. Bye. Oh, all done. This podcast is copyright 2023 by the Bearheart Group, LLC. Bearheart Labs is a brand of the Bearheart Group, and our podcasts are produced at our studios here in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Our podcast producer is Rickiana Denning, a.k.a. Ricky. Our co-host and hardworking administrator is Kirsten Hilgendorf, and I'm Bearheart. On behalf of all of us here at Bearheart Labs, thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope to have you back again soon.